Amir, welcome, ETS.
Thank you.
A little follow-up, a little cleanup after your fantastic presentation. First of all, for the folks at home, tell us who you are, what you do.
Sure. I am the president and CEO of Longwoods International. We are a market research consultancy that specializes in the travel and tourism industry.
You are one of the premier of that kind. What kind of stuff do you do?
Well, a whole host of research. We work with about 150 different destinations, corporate brands, and so forth in the travel industry. Do work in about a dozen countries, mostly centered around visitor research, image research for destinations, advertising effectiveness, and most recently, in my topic today, was sentiment research.
And you had some really interesting results on the sentiment research. For the first time ever, it dovetails. So go ahead and give us the 30 seconds why this is so spectacular.
All right.
And why is it good news?
The elevator story is this. You know, there's sentiment research, which you're talking about. We're talking to travelers since the beginning of the pandemic about how they feel about travel and what they're going to do about travel. For 37 years, we've been talking to travelers through Travel USA, which is the largest and longest ongoing study of traveling U.S. households, about how they've recently traveled and how they've taken trips. So usually when you ask somebody what they're going to do, and then you follow up and see what they did, there's usually just a little bit of divergence, right?
So it's just like real life.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So the interesting thing here is we found is for the first time in recent history for our industry, traveler sentiment and actual traveler behavior lined up almost perfectly.
So what travelers say they're going to do and what travelers actually do are, for the first time ever, as close to perfect as we can get.
Very, very close, within just a few points.
So let's unpack that just a little bit. Why? Yeah. Why do you think?
Well, a number of factors. First of all, you know, this pandemic was such an anomaly to the average consumer traveler, right?
Or everybody.
Everybody, yeah. But from a travel perspective, you know, people have had a lot of time to think about when they can go travel again, how they were going to do it, and what were they going to do, and who they were going to do it with, and where they're going to go, and those things. So I think we saw probably a lot more thought happening than usually does. So when you're talking to folks that they actually had an answer instead of catching them.
Would it be maybe because they've had time to think about it? I mean, like unprecedented amount of time to think about it?
Unprecedented amount of time to think about it. And it was also one of those big desires. I mean, pent-up demand for travel never waned. Through our studies, at the worst parts of the pandemic last November, December, pent-up demand never decreased below 57%. It's up to 90% right now. 90% of American travelers are telling us they're going to go somewhere in the next 6 months.
What is it in a non-pandemic era?
It's usually in the 80s to the low 90s. In there. So we're there.
Okay. So during pandemic, it was people are holding still. The sentiment was that it grew, and now it's at 90 something.
Yeah.
Okay. What are the other takeaways from that? Because I'm curious about this. Is it a shorter length of time, a shorter planning? Is it bucket list? Talk me through this.
So what we're seeing is still about half of American travelers are changing their plans, adjusting them due to the pandemic.
Okay.
The Delta variant has had a very big impact. 1 out of 3 travelers are telling us right now, as a direct result of Delta, they are postponing their travel to either later this year or early next year. But throughout the pandemic, we've been looking at, there have been several consistent patterns of changed travel. About 1/3 of travelers are still changing their travel from fly destinations to drive destinations.
Right.
So they want to drive the car. They're still leery of hopping on the plane and just being around all the other people in close quarters. Second thing we're seeing is about 1/3 of travelers are canceling their plans for international travel. Now, yesterday's announcement maybe change that, but
for the folks at home, what was yesterday's announcement?
Well, yesterday's announcement for the White House is that we are lifting inbound travel restrictions from about 33 different countries.
In November, right?
November 1st, yeah. Okay. So that sense of easing up the restrictions, even though we've been able to go overseas to Europe, for example, for a few months now, it's still things maybe getting easier here. So, long story short, we've seen that shift from international to domestic, which for a lot of U.S. domestic destinations, that's an affluent group and a great opportunity for the past year.
But stay on that for a minute. Aren't we also seeing a higher percentage of VFR in there?
We are seeing that. So we ask folks, we just asked the question this past
Visiting
week.
friends and relatives, so the folks who are,
Yeah, we just asked the question of folks of how they're going to be traveling this fall, those who indicated they're going to be traveling. And what you saw were a few things. Visiting friends and relatives, still number one. You know, how many birthdays, holidays, reunions, milestones we've missed with our friends and loved ones, right?
That's pent up.
Pent up, and it's releasing first and foremost, and it has been since the beginning of this pandemic. Secondly, we are seeing road trips. Road trips, they were on the rise even before the pandemic, but
Sure.
it only accelerated its rise here, and that's not going to go away anytime soon. But then when we talk about very specific activities, 6 out of the top 10 are the outdoors. Whether it's going to national parks, state parks, et cetera, whether it's beaches,
Yeah.
fall festivals.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, well, the beaches led the way into recovery, right?
Sure.
I mean, the Southeast U.S.
Yeah.
Coastal destinations.
So stay on this for a minute. It's VFR, which, from a tourism perspective, at least from a tourism where overnight stays are important and bed tax, et cetera, and getting the money to continue marketing versus staying at Aunt Edna's house because she missed you for so long.
Right.
I think the other prong here that's important to mention is, the business travel is still not there.
Yeah.
What is your take on that?
Yeah, that the news cycle is going to determine that recovery.
Yeah.
We saw pre-Delta variant, we saw business travel getting back to about 40 to 45% pre-pandemic levels. It was fun going on aircrafts and actually seeing fellow business travelers around me again. That was nice, but as we know, that's waned off again.
Right.
And I think it's more of a liability issue. But I will tell you, I really feel that the data I'm seeing and what we know from time in the industry is, the moment my competitor is in person calling on my clients, I'm saying forget HR. I'm sending people out.
Sure.
That's what you're going to see.
That's business. That's business travel.
Yeah.
Until such time, are we going to limp along on VFR and limp along? I don't mean limp along, but you understand what I mean.
Yeah.
Where the money comes from is usually not the.
We have to reset our expectations on what our visitor mix is going to be for the next 2 years. We really do.
Yeah.
We really do. And we've been doing that, but I think even more. I think people are willing, the business and the international, to come back faster than it's going. It will come back, and it's going to, but it's not. It's not going to be this explosion like we saw with leisure.
And not to put too fine a point on it, but that's those are the two biggest money makers for everyone in tourism, business and international. Correct?
It is, but you saw a funny thing this year, didn't you? You saw an American traveler hitting the road this year, taking their vacations that had the vacation money from last year they didn't spend.
Yeah.
They had stimulus checks in their bank account. And oh, by the way, average household income savings were the highest since before the Great Recession here in the U.S. in there. So, and our surveys, we asked the question every week we put those surveys out. What kind of impact will your financial position have on your ability to plan travel in the next 6 months? And you know what? That has never gone up, be above 25%. It's always stayed between 20 and 25%. Wow. So basically, this is a health issue. It's not an economic issue. Yeah. And American travelers, they're going to go. So you saw the Holiday Inn Express in Fort Lauderdale that's getting a $500 ADR this summer for limited service property that was probably understaffed, right? So you saw that happening. Now, I will say next year, they've spent that wad now. They're going to be more price conscious this next year. Sure. But I think you're going to see that the bread and butter for our industry is going to be domestic leisure into 2022.
One last thing on the way out, and I don't know whether this is in your bailiwick or not, but it's worth mentioning.
Yeah.
I think the airlines are particularly sensitive to this change in mix of traveler.
Yes.
When you talk about left of plane, you talk about the percentage of profit that comes in through business travel.
Yes.
Do you have any idea, is that really good? Because the common thinking is that's going to affect fares. I mean, the leisure fares, the $99 might be out the door. What's your take on that?
You know what? You saw them fly out the door this summer, no pun intended. I mean, the airfare there, but you've also seen them since back to school when Delta has hit. They are dropping rapidly again. So I don't think the $99 fares are gone just quite yet. Okay. I think you're going to have to watch again the news cycles. If you're planning your air travel, it's going to be one of those. You're going to see a roller coaster on airfare. It's the same route that you might be taking 3 or 4 times a year for your business travel. Yeah. You may be paying a wide swing on rates for that next year.
You said a phrase and it went by too quickly, but it stuck with me. This is not an economic issue; it's a health issue.
Right.
Yeah, that's a really interesting perspective, and I think if more people looked at it that way, some of the answers would come more quickly and more clearly. I think.
And so building off that, just real quickly, it's also we have a reconditioned traveler now. Yeah. And we've created expectations that we have to watch out for. Because here's the new traveler we've created over the past year and a half. As soon as the pandemic hit, the 48-hour hotel cancellation fees went out the window. The changing my flight ticket penalty.
Can I tell you, I loved that. Love that.
Yeah. And we love that, right?
Yes.
And I just told you 1/3 of travelers are postponing their travel due to the Delta variant. So why the heck would we roll that back right now? We now have a traveler that is conditioned to flexibility. Yep. We show them we can do it. Yep. Before we said we couldn't do it.
Right.
Now we show them we can do it. And they're going to be loyal to the brands that keep some degree of flexibility moving forward. The other thing is we've conditioned a traveler that expects clarity. You know,
And honesty.
Honesty
Yeah.
and clarity and transparency.
Yeah, I get it.
Those are the two things we're going to have to hit on with reaching our travelers.
We are off to a stutter start, if you will,
Yep.
but we'll get there eventually. And thanks so much for the insights and keeping tabs on this. It's information like yours that really give us actionable. We can decide, hey, this is what's happening. I love the idea that the sentiment and the actuality are starting to rhyme, and let's keep the recovery going.
Thank you. My pleasure to be here.
Thanks for being here at ETS.